This is what Bart Ehrman said when he was asked by his publisher about the textual variants of the New Testament. The question, why do you believe these core tenets of Christian orthodoxy to be in jeopardy based on the scribal errors you discovered? Answer by Dr. Bart Ehrman. Essential Christian beliefs are not, did you hear that? Are not, if you're a Christian, repeat it with me, are not, again, are not affected by the textual variants.
He said that in 2007 and he's changed his view since then. 94% of that Bible there is based upon manuscripts dating from the 9th century. You said that John 9-18 was dates from the 1st century. I'll tell you now, I'll make a promise to you that if you can prove that that came from the 1st century, I will give you, I promise you, I will give from the 1st century. If you can find any academic proof that that came from the first century, I will give you proof that I will give you 50 quid to any one of your.
Ladies and gentlemen. No, ladies and gentlemen. The story is about the adulterous woman that's found in the Gospel of John. Now, the brother is right. He asks a question and he walks away. He runs away from the answer. Come back. Right. So, unlike Muslims and the Dawah team here, I'm talking to you, an atheist, and you're a Muslim, and anyone else who's interested. Unlike Muslims, I am not here to make an unsubstantiated claim. In terms of hard evidence, there is no manuscript that I can provide that shows that the story of the adulterous woman is dated to the 1st century. However, I can give the opinion of the leading textual scholar of our age, one Dr. Bruce Metzger, who believes that the story of the adulterous woman was one of those stories known in the church but never written down, and was later written down by the church because it survived as an oral tradition. And indeed, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence would support that, because this story appears independently in different manuscripts written in different places at different times in different Gospels, meaning that the church was aware of the story but had no agreement about writing it into the text. That is the opinion of Dr. Bruce Metzger. I'll leave it to you to decide whether you owe me 50 quid or not.
No, listen, you can actually provide chapter and verse where that's said, because as far as I'm aware, the Bart Ehrman that you mentioned, he actually reckons, excuse me, just a second, how many, according to the Bart Ehrman that this gentleman mentions, he's now retired, but he was the emeritus professor at Chapeltown, okay, in America, right? I can't remember which university it was. Excuse me. How many documents date from the 1st century relating to the New Testament?
1 second, bro.
How many? You have a guess. How many documents from that Bible do you reckon date?
No, talk to me. Are you arguing with me?
How many do you
Oh, he doesn't want to talk to him. So I'll return to my conversation.
None.
Right, what's the question? I didn't hear it because you weren't talking to me.
How many dated from the 1st century? None.
No, I'd agree with that, totally.
Well,
have I made that claim?
I believe that you
Have
said
I made that claim?
John 19 may have come from the 1st century.
He's not a good listener, is he?
I was a very good listener.
He's not a good listener because I claimed that it was an oral tradition. That's what I claimed. And that's the opinion of Dr. Bruce Metzger. And furthermore, ladies and gentlemen, my opinion is not based on the scholarship of just Bart Ehrman. It is also the scholarship of Dr. Bruce Metzger, Dr. James White, Daniel Wallace. There are
he said the same
numerous
thing.
scholars that argue the position that I am arguing, and these names are some of the biggest names in the industry.
Can you please consider the oral tradition that he's talking about? The disciples, please. The disciples were Aramaic speakers. They were low class day workers. This gentleman is claiming that his Bible is pretty sound. Most of the manuscripts date from the 9th century, which is great if you want to know what people were thinking and believing in 890. But if you want to find out what people were thinking and feeling in the 1st century, it's impossible.
I'll correct him. I will correct him.
Listen,
ladies and gentlemen,
please let me
ladies
finish.
and gentlemen, the argument is being made that we don't have manuscripts from the 1st century, and so therefore we cannot know what they believed. This is rubbish. And the reason why it is rubbish, ladies and gentlemen, is because in the 1st century, until the invention of the printing press, all knowledge was oral transmitted. Are you going to talk to me?
Well,
let me ask you this question. Do you agree with me that the claims...
Probably not.
Do you agree with me that the claims of Christ's crucifixion and resurrection were being made before any gospel was written?
Ask me this.
No, I don't want you to tell me what question to ask you. I want you to answer the question I ask you. The question I asked you is, does the claim that Christ was crucified, Christ was resurrected, and that Christ will return in judgment predate the gospel? Answer the question.
Excuse me. There is evidence. Just a second. There is evidence that there was a Jesus and that he appeared before Pilate.
That's not my question.
No, excuse me, I'm getting to it. The thing is that I believe that there is evidence that there is a crucifixion. As for any evidence of the resurrection...
That's not my question. I'll ask you my question again, because as I said earlier, our atheist friend is a poor listener. I asked the question, is there evidence that the claims of Christ's crucifixion, resurrection and ascension predate the Gospels themselves? That's the question.
What is actually pre-mentioned in the Old Testament.
Do you understand the question?
Say it again.
Okay, so I'll ask the question for the third time to the atheist.
Yeah.
Is there evidence that the claim of Christ's crucifixion, resurrection and ascension predate the Gospel?
There is historical records that there might have been a Jesus. There is historical records that historical references. Yeah, but not the resurrection.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, he doesn't understand the question.
Right. What
so
are you saying?
I will have to answer the question for him. So the question that I asked was, is there evidence of the claims of the resurrection, crucifixion, ascension of our Lord existent prior to the Gospels? Well, the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, is that when you read the New Testament letters, they were written before the Gospels. Before. And in 1 Corinthians 15, we read as follows. Now, this is Paul writing.
Copies of the letters to Corinthians.
I make known to you, brethren,
no records
the gospel which I preach to you.
No records at all.
Ladies and gentlemen, he didn't want to, he couldn't answer the question, and now he doesn't want to listen to the answer. And the reason for that is because it undermines his disbelief. And he wants to hold on to his disbelief.
No copies of the letters.
No, I make known to you, brethren, the gospel which I preach to you. Notice, he's saying, I preach to you something before he writes the letter about it, which means that the preaching itself predates the letter. Now listen, what I also received. So before he preached it, before he wrote about it, Someone else told him. Someone else preached it to him. What I also received, that Christ down for our sins according to the scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he was raised on the third day according to the scriptures, and that he appeared to Cephas, then to the 12. After that he appeared to more than 500 brethren at one time, most of whom remain until now, but some have fallen asleep. Then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles, and last of all, as one untimely born, he appeared also to me. Paul is quoting an early Christian creed, which predates the letter.
And there's no original. There's no original.
Therefore, we can see
Yeah, 200
that
years
the
later.
belief in the
200 years
crucifixion of the resurrection, the crucifixion and resurrection, predates the documents. And scholars are unanimously in agreement
No, they're not.
that these documents were written, completed by 90 AD.
No, listen, excuse me, can I just say? No, you were talking about the 2 Corinthians, okay? And it's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. Originally, many of the copies may have been made in Aramaic, and then they transferred into the highest level Greek, very high scholarly Greek. Right, over a period of point. Well, my point is that it may well be we have no original sources of any of the New Testament dating from the first text.
So his argument is, oh well, you can't
Has anybody
believe
got
these
a credit
claims.
card or something like a credit card?
Ladies and gentlemen, the atheist is arguing, and these arguments are borrowed by the Dawah team because the Dawah team have no good Quranic arguments to make. So they have to borrow the arguments of atheists. Now, the atheist is making the claim that we don't have the original copies. I totally agree. I do not need to base my belief in the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ on any New Testament document. I can base it squarely and entirely on the teachings of the church, which predates the New Testament document, and to which the New Testament says is the container of truth. I'll give you the verse shortly. I can demonstrate the early belief in the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ by using the church fathers.
Yeah, so you use another part of the New Testament to prove his point. Special reading. Yeah, I know. Who reasoning. Thank you.
Who quote the New Testament as a separate source for their own beliefs, meaning there are two independent sources
They're not independent.
testifying to the same thing. You have the last one.
Excuse me. There are 5,500 fragments. Please. There are 5,500 fragments, according to Dan Wallace, relating to the New Testament.
Don't get over excited.
The thing is that they actually reckon that, not one of them agree with any of the others.
Let's just deal with that point.
Excuse me,
No,
please.
You're mischaracterizing the evidence, because the evidence is that those 5,000 manuscripts, 98% of all the textual variants are just spelling mistakes. It's like spelling John, G-O-N, G-O-N-N, G-O-H-N, or G-O-N-E. It doesn't make a difference. They're not even translatable.
You said this is my time. I give you that. But what I'd actually say is that the actual base documents, the first copies, are lost. Yeah, excuse me.
So what? So what?